The son of Odin, the forest Esa Millila, copyright 2014-2024 Esa Millila, all rights reserved. Chapter 1. Now is Erik 11 years old and flies to the Shadow Valley, where he and Slime arrives to the stone. Slime she walks beside him. The birds sing beautifully and the flowers are in full bloom. He takes on the stone as usual. But this time Erik has a weird feeling. He looks towards Slime and she turns red. They look at each other and Erik he gets a weird dream. He flies into a cave with Slime. At the entrance there is a big wolf that guards. They avoid narrow holes and flying near the walls. The cave is becoming less and sudden. They see a big man with a hood overhead. Erik jumps off Slime and moving slowly towards the big man, and suddenly he turns towards Erik and he back off with fear. The man has glowing eyes and sharp teeth. The man has a sword that he recognizes. It is Skogul's sword, and it seems to be Skogul that have received large forces. Skogul raises the sword and lots of creatures popping through walls. Suddenly Erik and Slime feel that someone dragged them and they fly out backwards and come out of the cave. Erik and Slime are now at the stone, and Erik and Slime opening their eyes and they look at each other with wide eyes. Erik jumps up on Slime and they fly up high in the clouds to see if they can find the cave, but fail to locate it anywhere. They fly back to the king's village where they land outside the king's house. The door of the house has made bigger because Slime can come inside lighter. Eva, who now lives with Erik and Lisbeth that has become almost like a spare mother, comes back and wonder if they want something to eat, but Erik he nods yes. Eva arrives at Erik and asks, "What is Erik? You seem worried?" Erik he replies nonchalantly, "No, I am thinking of my mother. Miss her so much." Eva says, "I understand that you are sad, but we'll take care of you, I promise you." Erik he replies, "I know that, but do you think Skogul will return again?" Eva she responds wonderingly, "We will never know. Why do you ask now? You have never asked that question before." Erik says, "I've just got some strange feelings." Eva she replies, "With your powers the feelings may mean something good." Erik responds, "Well, we'll see what it means. I want just to eat something and relax." Eva says, "We have made some fish to Slime and chicken with apple compote to you." Erik responds, "Well, thank you." Slime went to the fireplace and spins like a cat go to bed, and Eva comes with a basket full of fish that put on the stone floor. Slime gets up and squirts a little fire on them and eats up all the fish in a flash. Erik he devours itself half a chicken and ladles into the apple compote that is mushier than compote, but he does not complain because it's so good. Erik he goes to bed near Slime, and she takes her long tail and attracts Erik, who has fallen asleep from exhaustion. Eva looks at them and thinks, Erik has been through a lot. Good that he has his half-sister. Even if she is a creature, so will Slime always protect Erik. Eva cleans away all the food and washes the barrels and the cup. She walks up to Slime and she comes closer. Eva, she caresses her hand over Slime that starts purring like a cat. Eva walks away and let them rest. Slime falls asleep. The day turns into morning and they both slept hard all night. Ivar enters the king's house. Ivar, he is the king of Northland until Erik becomes 18. He walks slowly towards Erik and Slime. He points a bit on Erik and whispers, "Wake up, Erik! Erik, wake up!" Erik he wakes up to and sees big eyes staring at him. Slime looks at Erik, who has been awake for a while, but did not want to wake Erik from was in deep sleep. Erik he opened his eyes and rubbed them with his hands in order to see better. Ivar says, "There's something strange in Shadow Valley. It is coming smoke from there." Erik he responds wondering, "Well, that's strange. Somebody may make a fire there." Ivar replies, "No, it's something strange. I have sent out some men and they come back tonight. Then we will find out what it's all about." Erik replies, "I and Slime can fly there and see what's going on over there." Ivar replies, "Okay, but be careful and look only from the air." Erik replies, "Yes, we are always cautious," and he flashes with his right eye. Erik and Slime gets up and stretches and goes against the outside toilet. He opens the door and goes inside to pee, and suddenly a creature leaping over the wall with blazing speed, and Slime sees it. The creature looks like humans, but have only just skin and bones with bright yellow eyes, and it is heading towards the outhouse. Slime shoots a beam of light and hits it. The creature being divided in two, and the leg stops and the body is alive and crawling towards the outhouse. It gives out a screaming sound and tries to crawl to the outhouse. Erik rushes out and wonders what is happening. He sees the creature crawling. Erik moves and the creature crawl against Erik. Ivar arrives and cuts off the head of the creature and ends the life. All guards want to see what it is. Ivar takes the head with the few hairs that remain and shout, "For Odin!" and throw it in the mud. No one has seen anything like this before and wonder what that creature is. But everyone saw that it wanted Erik. Erik begins to understand what it is and says, "This must be Skogul's works." Ivar replies, "Yes, it may be Skogul's works and we need to explore the mountain smoke." Erik replies, "Slime and I fly away right now and see what's going on over there." Erik jumps up on Slime and she unfurls her wings and starts flapping and lifting up to the clouds. They fly extra low to not be seen down the ground. Erik is red all over his body and looking with Slime's eyes. They come close and see that it smokes from the mountains and there is a lot of lava from the mountains. There are dead trees around the mountain. They dive a little closer to see what it is. They see nothing moving down there and turn back to King's village. They land safely inside the King's village and Ivar will come rushing to Erik and wonder if they have seen anything. "Erik," he replies, "I just saw smoke and lava coming out of the mountain. There are dead trees around the mountain." Ivar replies, "It's weird." Erik says, "We have to be extra cautious and send for more men." Ivar nods yes and give the order to send some men to gather more soldiers. The men jump up on their horses and split up. They head towards the neighbouring village to gather soldiers. Chapter 2. Meanwhile in Valhalla, Odin goes back and forth and is worried about what will happen. He has observed everything from Valhalla and call for Thor and Loki. They come, both their father, and Odin tells what he has seen, but does not want to go down to help Erik and Slime. Thor says he has great powers. They can pull this off. Odin replies, "But Erik cannot use all his powers yet, and someone has to go down and help him too, so he can use these powers." Thor replies, "It is best that you go down," and shows to him. Loki says, "But Erik hates Dad because Maria and Sven died 4 years ago." Odin says, "Who should we send then?" Thor says, "We can send my son Mode. He can help Erik to release his powers." Odin says, "Yes, Mode, he is the right god. Get your son here right now." Mode comes in through the main gate and Odin takes him aside and says, "You have to go down to Earth to help my son Erik so he can use all of his powers, but do not show that you are a god." Mode nods as a yes and goes through the big gate and jumps down from Valhalla. Meanwhile, in the King's village sees Erik how the sky opens up and the clouds start to spin, and when the tornado touches the ground, it disappears and becomes normal. He wonders what it is and yells for Slime and jumps up on her. They fly off and lands where he saw the tornado was. He does not anything weird and sees just trees everywhere, but suddenly he hears a little boy shouting at him. The guy comes and says, "Who are you with that cool dragon? Are you from the Underworld or are you a god?" Erik replies, "I'm a half-god and called Erik. What are you doing here and what is your name?" The guy replies, "My name Mode and have gone astray here. I lost my parents for a couple of days ago and have since tried to find them." Erik says, "Okay, I will help you find your parents, but you must first come to the King's village to get some food. You're probably hungry." Mode says, "Well, I have not eaten food for 2 days. I am really hungry." Slime she lifts into the sky and circulates around the two, and Erik and Mode wanders toward the King's village. Suddenly sees Slime that tree falls down a little further away. Slime screams out a warning signal to Erik. Erik he begins to glow and glow red from his eyes. He points to the Mode to take cover behind some large rocks. Mode does as Erik says. Slime sees what it is and jets fire to stop the huge creature and fly back to Erik. Slime is next to Erik and the trees fall down. Erik feels how the ground starts to shake. He sees only the trees flying around like it would be small sticks, but suddenly it stops and becomes silent. Erik and Slime look at each other and wonder what kind of creature that behaves so. Erik, he is pointing up in the sky so Slime will fly up and see what it is. Erik, he sees with his eyes through Slime, but there is nothing there. But suddenly he sees the trees gently overturned and set aside. Erik hears how it sizzles. Suddenly he sees large eyes directed that looks towards Slime. The creature jumps up and tries to catch the Slime. Chapter 3. Erik he comes out of the trance and sees how Slime is under attack, but Slime flies to the side at the last second. It is Fenris wolves that are back. The Fenris wolf lands on all four legs on the ground. The ground shakes so hard that Erik loses balance. Mode sees how Erik comes back to normal and has lost his protection. Mode runs up to Erik and he lifts him up. Fenris the wolf sees his chance and rushes towards Erik and Mode. Mode shouting, "Think fire!" Erik wonders what he means, and Fenris the wolf getting closer. Mode screams out again, "Think of the fire!" Erik, he thinks of fire. His eyes light turn red again, but this time he begins to burn all over his body. Erik panics and spins around, and fire coming out of his hands, and the fire are spreading around him and Mode. Fenris the wolf stop outside the ring of fire, and Erik sees the beast shows his teeth and goes around the fire. Slime sees his chance and breathes fire on Fenris wolf that are howling from the pain. It burns on Fenris the wolf's back. Fenrir trying to roll to extinguish the fire, but cannot. It decides to run away down to a nearby lake and jumping in. They hear how it sizzles and smoke when it hits the water. The wolf swim to the other side and start to shaking his body, so they're flying water as it rains over Erik and Mode. Fenris wolf howling, and all the leaves around fall down slowly on the ground. The Fenris wolf runs up to the hill and jump over. Erik sees how the beast looks over the edge, and his eyes light up. They hear how the monster disappears. Erik, he's wondering and thinking how Mode knew that he could make fire. He takes Mode's shaft, and Mode turns around and he asks, "How did you know I could make fire?" "I did not know that." Mode becomes red on his face and understands that he has been revealed. Suddenly, it lights up and smoke comes out of the body from Mode and real Mode arrives. He is 18 years old and blonde like his father Thor. Erik, he is surprised and runs for a few yards. Mode says, "I am Thor's son, and I called Mode. I am here to help you so you can use all your powers." Erik responds with a surprised voice, "Is it Odin that has sent you?" Mode, he becomes surprised but do not want to lie and replies, "Yes, it is. We gods are worried about what will happen to you. An even darker time has come." Erik asks, "Darker time? It cannot be darker than my mother was killed 4 years ago." Mode replies, "I understand that you are missing your mother now, but you need to protect yourself and your people." Erik responds irritably, "It's what I'm doing. One always defend my people." Mode, he sees that Erik gets angry and says, "Hey, I am here to help you." Erik shouts that Slime will come, and Erik jumps up on Slime and says, "We need no help. Tell my father that." Mode looks astonished out, and Slime lifts up in the air and fly toward King Village. They land inside the wall, where Erik he jumps off and goes into his house and finds some bread as he begins to eat at. Slime looks at him wonderingly and bumps with her nose and looking toward Erik with wide eyes. Erik he gets in a little better mood and hugs Slime. Erik he shouts, "Lisbeth, can Slime get some fish before we go to sleep for the day?" Lisbeth replies, "Have lots of fish in the stock comes with a basket at once." Lisbeth, she goes to get fish. Slime goes against her favourite spot near the fireplace. Lisbeth comes with a basket full of fish she overturns on the tiled stone floor. Slime, she breathes fire over the fish and they become grilled and eats them in a flash. Lisbeth smiles and itches, Slime under the chin, and she starts purring like a cat. Erik, he comes and lies down beside Slime that lay over one wing, and they fall asleep quickly. Erik gets a strange dream in which he sees with someone else's eyes. He sees that he is in a cave and see many beasts that he never seen before, especially a big beast pulling out corpses from the earth, and he points at them with a sword, and corpse comes alive. He sees how he wanders further into the cave, where there is the water and lots of fire coming out of the mountain. He walks towards the water and comes to the water's edge, where he goes down on his knees and looks toward the water. He sees a face he recognizes. It is Skogul, and he looks toward the water with big eyes and scream out with a deep voice, "This time you will die, Erik." Erik wakes up and his body is so hot, and Erik looks at his hand that's on fire. Slime wakes up too and sees how Erik's hand is burning, and he has burning stripes that go around the body. After a while, Erik becomes calmer and hands stop burning. Erik faints from exhaustion. Slime is panicking and screaming like a bird. Lisbeth comes rushing in and see that steam comes from Erik's body. She takes on him with his hand and burns. Lisbeth hurry and fetch a bucket of water and throws at him. The water turns to steam quickly, and Erik he wakes up and is feeling a little exhausted. Erik says exhausted. I had a weird dream where Skogul resurrects the dead from the earth. Lisbeth she listens and gets big eyes and says, if this is true, then you need to arrange more men. You cannot do everything alone. There may be thousands he revives. Erik he replies, I will talk with Ivar about this and explain that we need more men. Erik he is all sweaty after all and whispers in Slime's ear, come, we fly down to the lake and swim a little. Slime she jumps and leaps like a dog and waving her long tail. Erik tells Lisbeth, let's go away for a while and take bathe. Eva comes down from the stairs and hears that they are going for a swim. Erik sees Eva coming down. Erik falls into his own thoughts and see how Eva's hair rises and the heart begins to beat tougher. Slime sees how Erik looks silly on the face and pushes him, so he wakes. Erik looks at Slime and blinks with one eye. Eva has now come down from the stairs and asks, I heard you're going for a swim in the lake. Can I come with you? Erik cannot utter a word and clears his throat, but then suddenly pushes Slime on Erik's back. And Erik says, yes, you can come with us and swim. Eva, Erik and Slime go out and Erik sees Modus watching him from a distance. Erik, he jumps up on Slime's back and stretches out his hand and Slime helps to lift gently Eva with the left paw. Slime, she starts flapping their wings and they lift up the sky. They fly just under the clouds and Eva, she sits behind Erik and hugging hard on Erik. After a moment they see the lake, which is near the north village. They circulate around the lake and lands gently on the beach. Erik jumps of Slime and takes off his clothes. But Eva, she jumps in with clothes on. Slime sees how they throw water at each other, and Erik shouts to Slime, jump into the water. Are you chicken? Slime looks around and taking a giant jump and lands 5 feet from Erik and Eva. There becomes a giant wave that pushes Erik and Eva a little further away. Erik and Eva, they laugh and have fun. Slime is hungry and dives into the deepest waters and flaps its wings as she flies on the sky and has violent speed underwater. She sees a big fish and catches it quickly and come up on the beach where she plays with it like a cat does with a mouse. Erik and Eva see Slime has caught a big fish and they come up from the water and the fish lying on the beach. Erik asks if they can taste the fish and Slime she nods as a yes. Slime sprays fire on fish and Erik finds some wood that he throws near the big fish and the wood catches fire. Erik sees that it is something that observes them from the woods. Erik goes to Slime and whispers in her ear. Slime lifts up in the clouds and comes far behind and sail with her huge wings. Eva sees how Erik's eyes turn red and she says, what is Erik? Is there anything wrong? Erik is a trance-like state and looks with Slime's eyes and Slime approaching where it rustled in the woods. Slime is now above and Erik sees what it is and come out of the trance. Erik goes to the forest and sees Modus hiding in the bushes. He says to him, I need no help. Tell it to Odin. Mode, he is completely silent and does not respond to Erik and the wind suddenly begins to increase. Slime lands beside Eva and Erik, he backs against Eva and Slime. They see how the wind spins around Mode, and he follows with the wind up towards the air, where the cloud splits and comes and a blue light appears and go. Mode disappears into Valhalla, where he goes directly to Odin and explains what he has done, and that Erik does not want any help. Odin, he gets angry and beats his rod on the ground. Below the lake, where Erik, Slime and Eva are seeing it, how it increases in storm and lightning a little further away. Erik, he says, come Eva, we go to the king's village. A storm is near. Eva asks, what did you say to that guy? Erik replied, that guy is the god Mode and I told him that I did not need any help from Odin. Eva, she thinks a little and says, we may need help. We all know that Skogul wants revenge. Erik, he replies, I and Slime can take care of him and I will send for many thousand troops to help us. Both are quiet and they land in the king's village. Erik, he jumps down and taking Eva's hand and helps her down from Slime. Slime bumping Erik with her nose and he says, what is it? Erik is a bit irritated. Chapter 4. Erik, he says, forgive Slime, I was just annoyed by Mode. Erik gives Slime a hug and Eva watches and sees that it's sibling love. Ivar comes running against Erik and says, the men have come back, but they found nothing on the mountain that smokes. Erik replies, There is something dangerous going on there. We must send for help, and the men we sent a few days ago weren't in touch. Ivar responds, I am sending a man to North Village. There we have over 1,000 soldiers who have nothing to do. Erik, he replies, do it. But who should you send there? I and Slime must be here in case there is an attack. Ivar replies, I can send Bjorn. He is the best scout. Bjorn, he is long and narrow but smooth. He has brown long hair and helmet with reindeer horn. He is known to find everywhere, and above all, he is a good rider. Ivar, he shouts for Bjorn and tells that he needs go to North Village and get help. Bjorn makes him ready to leave. He makes sure that he has enough to eat and drink a few cups of mead and pack a bag full of dried meat and some bread. He jumps on his horse that he named Vilda. That is a workhorse, but is faster than he looks. Bjorn waving to all and raises his axe and waving goodbye. Bjorn, he rides away quickly and tries to avoid Dead Forest. Death's Forest is a large area that stretches north of King's Village and reaches all the way to North Village. Those who have gone into the woods have never returned home. It is rumoured that there are beings there who abducts everyone, but no one knows what is inside the forest. He starts to ride around the forest, and it will take 2 days to get there, instead of 1 day riding through the forest. But Bjorn wants to be on the safe side to arrive. He and the horse Vilda ride on the outside of the forest, and suddenly got Bjorn see a beautiful woman waving to him, and he becomes enchanted and rides towards her, but the beautiful woman walks into the woods. Bjorn, he stops and looks into the woods and thinking, if this young beautiful woman can go there, so maybe it not so dangerous. Bjorn decides to ride in and follow the woman, who goes deeper and deeper into the forest. After a while, the woman stops and Bjorn jumps off the horse. Bjorn walks to the beautiful woman, and Bjorn is as enchanted by her look and the heart pounding. Suddenly, the woman changing shape and has black hair that goes down to the ground and yellow eyes. She has sharp teeth and is much taller than Bjorn. This woman is faster than Bjorn and pushes him hard that he flies away many feet and sliding against a tree and pass out. After a moment, he wakes up and sees a different shape that is large and looks straight deep into Bjorn's eyes. The figure takes his right hand around his neck and lifts the Bjorn 2 yards from the ground and throws him away, where he lands in a bush. The beast, who is Skogul, retrieves his sword and goes against Bjorn that tries to escape. Skogul taking big steps and runs to Bjorn, and he raises his sword and pats on Bjorn's shoulder. Skogul turns around and gives a smile to Bjorn and disappears. Suddenly, Bjorn sees a lot of eyes that glow in the woods. The creatures run to Bjorn. The creatures are skin and bones and looks like walking corpse and give a clapping sound. They run at a ferocious speed towards Bjorn and beats him and kicking him. 20 creatures take on the horse Vilda and starts beating on the horse that will soon beat to death, and they quickly begin to eat on horse raw. Bjorn, he dies, and then comes Skogul forward and gives a sound, and the dead keep their ears and disperses from Bjorn. Skogul brings out his sword and scratches the tip of it Bjorn's corpse that gets open sores, and they go together quickly again. Suddenly Bjorn begins to breathe again. He takes a deep breath and looks around. His eyes are completely black, and just after starting Bjorn's eyes to glowing yellow. Bjorn is living death and become embraced by the other, providing a sound beating them with the stomach while they open their mouths. Meanwhile, in King's Village gets Erik a strange feeling that Bjorn is not living anymore and shouts it to Slime. She comes to Erik and he jumps on Slime's back and whispers in Slime's ears, and they fly up into the air. They fly around the edge of Death Forest and doesn't see Bjorn and decide and fly over the Death Forest, and after a while they see something and circulate, and they see a horse that is almost only bones and blood on the ground. Erik recognizes the rug hanging on a bush and understands that Bjorn is no more on this earth. Erik and Slime, they decide to quickly fly to North Village. They fly high above the clouds where Erik will get red wisps around the entire body, and his eyes glow red. They fly as fast as they can, and after a short while they see North Village and lands outside the wall, and the guards see that it is Erik who comes walking toward the gate. The guards rush and open the big gate and welcomed by the cheers of many people. Erik has not been with North Village for a long time, and the people have not seen him for a while, and can't wait to see the firstborn to be king when he is 18. Erik and Slime enters, and all the people go down on their knees to show their respect for Erik, and he says, "Please stand up." Erik goes to a guard named Jan and says he wants to talk to the headman of the village. Jan, he nods to Erik and runs into the biggest house in the village. The people, they are becoming curious about Slime, and they want to pat her. Erik, he tells them, "You shall not pat Slime. She is my sister, and should respect her." All the people, they have big eyes and apologize to him and go down on their knees, and Slime looks proudly at the people. Slime smiles and lifts one paw that they should stand up, and there is one that sees that she rises on one foot and then quickly pushes on next person, who in turn pushes on the next, and it continues, and eventually all rise. The village boss named Olav comes rushing out from the big house and runs down to Erik and goes on his knees, and Erik, he asks him to stand up. Erik wants to talk to Olav alone, and Olav says, "We go to my house where we can be alone." Erik nods and Slime nods, and they go into the house. Everyone looks towards Slime with big eyes, and all the children are afraid of her, have never seen a beast before. They come into the house and shut the big doors and sit around the big table. Erik, he says, "Do you know why I am here?" Olav, he responds, "No, I do not know why you are here, but it is a great honor to have you here." Erik says, "Have there been a few men here and asking for men to the king's village?" Olav gets big eyes and replies, "No, it has not been unknown men and asked that question." Olav, he gets nervous and wondering why he is the village. Erik says, "It is so that I need as many men as you can spare to me." Olav, he gets a little relieved and replies, "Sure, you can get these men, but what will you do with them?" Erik says, "Well, it's so probably soon there will be a war with Skogul again, and he has become stronger than he was 4 years ago." Olav, he starts to shake and say, "SS Skogul, is he back?" Erik replies, "I believe it, and therefore I need your men." Olav replies, "You will get your men. I am sending them to you tomorrow morning, and they will arrive in 2 days. Erik says, "Good, make sure they will set off early. Now I must return to my village." Olav answers, "Shall ensure that they will set off in person." Erik, he waved goodbye to the people and jump up on Slime, and she spreads its huge wings and start to flapping. The people look with big eyes and mouth open when they lift from the ground. They come up in the clouds, while the king's village. The guards see that Bjorn comes walking from the north side of the wall. The guards see that he is bruised and has not his horse with him. They open the little door and Bjorn takes out his axe and rushes into the village. Chapter 5. Bjorn starts chopping wildly with his axe and hits hard on the guard who opened the door and has not a change to defend him. Bjorn hits on the shoulder, and the axe comes out on the side of the stomach. The guard is split into 2 pieces, and the people and all the kids start screaming. Ivar comes rushing out from the king's house and see how Bjorn's eyes is glowing yellow. He sees how Bjorn strikes against people with his great axe. He tries to say something, but could not get a sound and continues to wield his axe on the people. The guards rush down from their towers and surrounds Bjorn and Ivar, shouting, "Stop! He is mine!" And he goes down slowly against Bjorn and takes out his sword and goes down on one knee and begging for Odin. Bjorn comes running towards Ivar that stand up and cut off Bjorn's head. The body continues to run until it meets the wall of the house and fall together. Ivar takes up Bjorn's head and sees that his eyes are open, and they are yellow, but they quickly change to the original colour that is blue. Ivar understands this is Skogul's work and calling on the soldiers for a meeting. They go into the king's house to sit around the large table. Erik, he comes down from the clouds and sees that there is a body and blood on the ground. Slime lands gently and Erik says to a guard, "What is going on here?" The guard named Johan replies, "Bjorn came in injured and was totally crazy and started to chop at the people." Erik, he looks around and sees that there are 3 dead bodies and some are injured. Erik says, "Where is Ivar?" Johan replies, "He is in your house with the soldiers for a meeting." Erik, he says not a word and goes against the king's house and opens the door and walks in and sees that Eva's shaking and scared. Erik goes to Eva and gives her a hug and says, "The danger is over," and pat her cheek with his hand. Erik, he goes down the stairs to the great hall and sees that Ivar and soldiers are sitting there and discussing. Erik goes over to Ivar and says, "What happened here?" Ivar explained exactly what had happened and explained with eyes that they became normal after death. Erik, he goes around the big table and says, "I have been in North Village and arranged that it will over 1,000 men here. They will begin their trek tomorrow morning." Ivar stands up and hits the table with joy and says, "That's the best news I have had in a long time. We need these men." All the soldiers begin to nudge each other, and Ivar shouts out, "Tonight will be a party, and the mead is flowing like gold in the throat." All soldiers are cheering and looking forward to quench their thirst with mead instead of spring water. Erik, he shakes his head and walks away and goes over to Eva and comforts her, while Slime goes on her usual spot in front of the fireplace. Lisbeth comes with a big fat salmon that they had fished up in the river and put it in front of Slime, start to lick her mouth, and she gets up and pushes gently with her head against Lisbeth and purrs like a cat. Slime jets a little fire on the big fat salmon, so it is completely black and swallows it whole. Slime puts his head over his one paw and falls asleep and snores, so that red slime comes from her nose. It is starting to get dark, and the party begins by presenting freshly grilled pork on the table and a big barrel of mead that all go and dip their full mugs. Slime is asleep, and the festivities will continue during the night, and Erik, he is getting tired and goes up to his bed and fall asleep right away. He gets a strange dream, and Slime gets the same dream, and her wisps on the body turns red. They come into the dream and they see how Skogul is in the Underworld, and it's a big creature that drags human bodies from the walls, and Skogul scratched them with his sword, and they begin to wake up. They look with Skogul's eyes how he goes further down into the Underworld. And there are lights. He goes down in a big empty space where there is lava, and it lights up everything, and looks toward the sea of monsters that raises their paws and hands. Suddenly, they see with somebody else's eyes, and see how Skogul come up with a platform where he raises his sword, and there is a lot of beasts cheering and raises their hands. They make a grunting sound. An unknown Valkyrie woman comes up on the platform, and they are now looking with Skogul's eyes, and Valkyrie woman approached Skogul, and she looks deep into the Skogul's eyes, and she screams and points to Skogul's eyes. They see how Skogul look at his shiny sword and see how Erik and Slime see through his eyes. Skogul says with a rasping sound, "Erik, soon I will cut you in 1,000 pieces." Slime wake up and look how red she is and screaming like a hawk and call on Erik, who wake up in a cold sweat and rushing down towards Slime and hugs her. They look deeply into each other's eyes, and Erik hears a girl's voice. "Erik, we need help. We cannot cope alone against Skogul and his soldiers." Erik runs and do not think that's true. He hears how Slime talks to him and shakes his head and gets really happy to have heard his sister's voice for the first time. Erik approaches Slime's eyes and looks deep inside again and thinks, "We can do this." Slime is thinking, "No, we cannot. We must get the help from Mode." Erik is so proud that he does not want help from anyone and replies, "We need no help." Slime thinking, "Listen to me, my beloved. We need help, otherwise the earth will be controlled by Skogul." Erik, he runs and sits down on a chair and takes his hands over his ears and thinks of his mother, and he thinks, "Jeet is Odin, who created all gods and monsters, and it is his fault that my mother is dead." He hears a faint voice from Slime. "Jeet is not Odin's fault that your mother has died. Odin has created all the gods, but Skogul creates all monsters, and there is a constant struggle of good and evil." Erik gets a lesson and is surprised at the response of Slime. He goes to Slime and looks deep into her eyes again and thinks, "Jay did not know that Skogul created the shadow and the other beasts." Slime is thinking, "Jeet's true. If you do not believe me, so we can go up to Valhalla by the Tree of Life and ask all gods who is behind all evil." Erik thinks surprised. The Tree of Life, what is it? Slime thinking, "The Tree of Life is the one who controls the weather and the balance between Earth and Valhalla and gives life to all that exists." Erik responds thinking, "Jay will think about it, but we have to stay here in case they attack." Erik, he goes over to Ivar and the others who are still partying in the Great Hall and tells them, "Ivar, we have to reinforce the guards and increasing patrols around the village." Ivar looks surprised and asks a question. Why? Erik replies, I have seen that Skogul have thousands beast ready, and he will attack soon. Ivar and the others look at each other with wide eyes, and they rush out quickly. Some of them getting up from chair to fast, and they go dizzy and fall on the ground. Most of them wobble back and comes out and yells out to the guards, Wake the others and increase the guards. No one will sleep tonight. After a few minutes of screaming, a guard from the north side that is against Death's Forest. The guard named Ragnar screams out, Look over there! It shines and it's big! Everyone is going to the north side of the wall, and they become completely terrified what it is. Of why. Erik rushes up to a tower to see that there is a shiny big creature and do not know what it is. Erik looks towards Slime and asks her to fly up and see what it is. Slime expands out her huge wings and start flapping. All the people around looking at Slime get sand in the eyes. She flies low so she passes the right wall and flies higher and higher. Erik, he has red eyes and guards looking with big eyes at Erik. Erik he sees with Slime's eyes that getting further ahead. Erik does not believe his eyes and sees a large moose that shines as the finest silver, and it breathes fire out of the body in all directions. Erik disconnects Slime and telling Ivar what he has seen. Ivar get big eyes and takes a horn and blow on it. The men and women are running out and wondering what happened. Ivar shouts, All men take your weapons. Now it begins. Children and women in the king's house now. Erik he looks with Slime's eyes again and sees that there are wolves beside the big silver moose. The wolves are just skin and bones, and the eyes glow yellow, and he knows that this is Skogul's works. Slime passing the large silver moose, and it looks against Slime and starts spraying out fire from his nose while taking his right foreleg and scrape it on the ground with the hoof. Odin sees everything from Valhalla and calls all his children to see. They look down and witnessing a never-seen-before creature. The moose looks at wolves and nods his head, and they start to take off towards the king's village. The wolves are howling while running towards the king's village. Erik sees all this and yells out, Now they come! Be prepared. 50 men stand ready with their bows and 60 men raising their swords in the air. A man named Ola, he is so afraid that he is shaking all over, and Ragnar looks at him and says, We only die once, so why not now? And he starts to laugh. Ola, he becomes even more frightened and shits on himself and goes down on his knees. Ragnar shouts out, Ola goes down from the wall. I cannot concentrate when it smells shit in here. Ola, he is so scared that he shakes and do not get a word out of his mouth. Ragnar lifts up his foot and shoves Ola from the wall and yells out, Let us die for Odin and the king. The wolves come closer and all men shouting, For Odin. A man named Albert shouting, Come on, you little puppies. The wolves are getting closer and he sees that they are not so small and shouts, Oh shit! The wolves are just 100 yards and Ivar screams out, Shoot! And all of the bows shoot their arrows. 5 wolves get hit, but they still run and Slime blowing off fire along the wall, and the wolves are stuck. They are walking and looking towards all men, and men see how they have yellow eyes and sharp teeth. The fire starts to go out and they hear a big roar and the ground shakes. They see the big silver moose come rushing further away. Slime comes down to Erik that jumps up on Slime. They lift up in the air and turning towards the moose and shoot light rays that hit, but the bounces at the moose and do no harm the creature. Ivar, he begins to pray for Odin, and then a figure whizzing past at Ivar. Ivar sees a familiar figure. It is the god Skei that arrives to Ivar, who throws with her long hair. She grabs Ivar's neck and kissing him hard. Ivar becomes quite dizzy and fall down on the ground. Skade leans over Ivar, and he sees how her eyes glow blue. She flashes with one eye and takes out her bow and charging it with 4 arrows and aim at the wolves. She releases the string and Ivar sees everything like it would be slow motion. Everything goes in slow motion and Skade runs into fierce momentum. She hits 4 wolves in the eye and the arrows penetrate deep into the wolves' brains. Quickly, she is beside the wolves and pulls out arrows and charge again with the same arrows. She aims and shoots off and hits 4 wolves straight in the eyes on them and they collapse. Now there are only 2 wolves left and they rush back toward the woods. All men see only a flash of light, but do not know what was. Skade flashing with her right eye to Ivar and disappears as quickly as she came. The silver moose comes rushing towards the king's village and bending down his big horns to the ground and hits the wall that goes into 1,000 pieces. The men fly away like leaves in the wind. Moose continues through the entire village. The moose hits many houses and turning at Erik and Slime that lands outside the shattered wall. Erik jumps off and his body is absolutely red. Slime goes behind Erik and is completely red too. The moose spray fire from the nose and kick with his hooves. The moose runs towards Erik. Erik pulls the red shield from his left arm and puts down right knee. The moose are coming running with his horns dragging on the ground. Moose hit Erik's shield and the moose flies over and lands on his back 100 yards away. The moose stands up on its 4 legs again, but hears a sound. It is Skogul calling the moose from Death's Forest. Erik sees Skogul's eyes and the famous sword. The moose rushing back to the forest. They see the hundreds of yellow eyes watching from the forest and how it disappears into the deep woods. Odin and the others who have seen everything from Valhalla will be relieved but still worried. Odin shouts out to all the other gods, "We have never seen that creature before, but Erik can do this." He takes his father Odin aside and whispers in his ear, "What do we do with the Skade? She will intervene in this matter." Odin whispers back, "She has chosen to live on the earth, so she can do what she wants." Meanwhile, down at Earth, Erik has gathered and puffing from exhaustion. Ivar comes running to Erik and he helps up. Ivar says, "This is just the beginning and we need more help. Can you ask more of the gods to help us?" Erik, he asked wonderingly, "Which god? I have not asked for help." Ivar says, "Did you see the woman who shot the wolves? It was the Skade that helped us." Erik replies, "No, did not see it, but I have not asked for help." Ivar says, "Can you ask them to help us? That big moose will crush us. If they come with thousands of creatures at the same time, it will be the end of us and humanity on Earth." Erik says, "I will think about it." Slime comes rushing and pokes at Erik with his nose, and looking a bit askance at Erik, who says, "I will think about it." Slime bumping Erik with his nose again, and Erik gets a little annoyed and says, "Okay, then we can go visit the gods." Slime is beginning to jump like a dog, and Ivar see with surprising eyes when it behaves so. Erik says, "Calm down, Slime. We will contact them tomorrow morning. I must go and rest now." Slime smiles from ear to ear so his teeth showing, and she is so happy. They go into the king's house, where the women and children come out from. The women begin to help the injured. Some have broken bones, and suddenly a woman howls and everyone rushes to her. The woman named Embla has found her man impaled on a pole that goes straight through the body, and the man is dead. It is Ola is lying there dead, and Ragnar arrives and feels guilty, for it was he who had knocked him from the wall. Ragnar thinks it's his fault, but chooses not to say anything about the incident. Ivar comforts Embla and she hugs Ivar hard, and the tears fall down slowly down her cheek. Even Ivar starts to cry. A big crowd begins to gather, and they lift up Ola in the air and they take him to the king's house, where women may only enter except Embla. The women remove the pole from the body and clean his body and put him some new clothes. They put some flowers on his stomach and they take him out, and everyone and the people cry out, "Live well in Valhalla." They have prepared some wood at southern wall, and they place Ola on the firewood, and Embla comes to Ola where she breaks into tears. Ivar comes with a torch and give it to Embla. She lights the firewood and Embla goes down on her knees and look how Ola burns, but suddenly raises Ola and Embla screams, "He is alive!" extinguishing the fire now. Ivar calms Embla and says, "Sometimes the air gets out of the stomach and it looks like it is alive." Ivar hugging hard on Embla, and they see how he falls back into the fire. Ragnar look from far away and go into the village again. Ivar shouts out, "We have no time to lose. We must build up the wall again. Make sure to defend all sides of the walls." All men go to the south side and starts cutting down trees, and Slime helps to push down trees and dragging them to the north side. Erik, he is up in his bed and resting. People see how Slime work hard and puts down all the trees needed in no time. She pulls all the trees and dragging them up to the men that using iron nails and string to get them in place. After 5 hours of work and the sun starts to come up and Erik awakes. Slime is waiting for him in the great hall. Erik comes down from the stairs and yawns, and Slime skip and jump for joy. Erik is hugging Slime, and they go out, and Erik sees how much work they've done at night. Ivar comes and says, "Good morning, Erik. Hope you slept well." Erik responds, "Well, I have slept like a log." Ivar replies, "Speaking of logs, yes, Slime has helped to reinforce the wall and see the hole not there anymore on the north side." Erik, he goes around and looks and comes from the north side and see that they have done a good job. He sees how they have put down lots of wooden piles in the ground around the village and laced them up. Lisbeth comes running out from the king's house and yells to one of the men, "Where is Erik?" The guard says, "Out of the north wall." She runs around and comes to Erik and gives him a big hug, and Slime comes to them and smell at Lisbeth that says, "Oh, have some food for you. The breakfast is the most important meal." She smiles and removes the cloth from the basket and gives Erik a little bread and a big fish to Slime that start to skip and jump. Lisbeth throws the fish a little further away and Slime hurries there. He jets a little fire on the fish and hit it with his paw to extinguish the fire. She devours the fish directly, and Erik begins to chew on the bread. Meanwhile, at the north village, Olav comes out of his house and he sees that all the soldiers standing there. Olav asks Lars, who is his right hand, to count all. There must be 1,050 soldiers. The soldiers are outside North Village wall, and they greet Olav, welcome to call out his name. Olav, Olav, Olav. Olav, he gets cocky and brush up, and Lars starts with figuring all soldiers. After a few minutes, he concluded that a soldier is missing, but Olav blows in the horn that they are going away. Then a man running with his pants down, and the soldiers are laughing at him. Lars goes against him and asks, "Why are you late, Sigurd?" Sigurd replies, "I am sorry, but I was just a little bad in my stomach, so I must go and take a shit." Lars replies, "Well, you get a warning this time. Stand in line." Sigurd pulls up his pants and ties them with string and runs into and ends up in the middle of line of soldiers. Olaf and Lars is the only one who has horses. The others may go by foot. Olaf asks Lars to blow the horn, and they start to go beside the west side of Death's Forest. By outside the King village, Erik he jumps up on Slime and waving to everyone in the village. Slime begins to beat with their huge wings, and the people defend their eyes with the hands so it may not grit them. They lift up in the air, and people waving to Erik and Slime. Slime looks down on the village and smiles while he gives a bird-like sound. Erik he turns red in the eyes and think, "You know where to go, sister." Slime thinking, "Yes, hold on tight. Now we will fly fast," and look toward Erik with his one eye and smiles from ear to ear. After a few hours' flight to the north, they come to the west side of the forest and they see soldiers walk underneath, and they are on their way to King's village. Erik, he is smiling and looking down and thinking, "Yes, soldiers are coming. Now I can slack off a little." Slime thinking, "Saggy, not too much. We have many hours of travel to the Tree of Life, which is high up in the north." They have flown 8 hours, and Erik, he thinks, "Are we there yet?" Slime thinking, 4 few more hours and we are there." Meanwhile, at the west side of Death's Forest, Sigurd, he goes and farts all the time, and in the end, he may be at the end on the line because everyone doesn't like the smell. Sigurd is tired and tells Olav, "The men are getting tired now. Best we camp here." Olav answers, "Good thinking, Lars. Give the signal that we should stop here and make camp for the night." The soldier stops and sits down and is completely tired after the long walk. Some goes to fetch firewood, but Olav is shouting, "Men do not go into the forest of death, then you are gone forever." Everyone nod as a yes. They look for branches that have blown away and find a large log that they carry and put it down on the ground. They set it on fire and soon it becomes heat and more light. They throw more branches that they have collected, so it is enough for the whole night. Everyone starts eating food. They bring with them bread and dried fish and meat. Lars rides around with his black horse and gives the order to 100 people to take the first guard, and after 4 hours they shall be replaced. Inside the Death Forest, Skogul he draws his sword on the ground and another creature that is white as snow. The creature has a dog with him. They go down into a burrow. Up in Valhalla, Odin and Loki seen everything, and Loki, he gets angry and break things. He takes his mead cup and throws it on a wall. Odin tries to calm down and he eventually calms Loki down. After a few minutes he can breathe again and says, "Dad, you know who is with Skogul? You saw it or not?" Odin replies, "Yes, I saw who it was. It is your daughter Hel. Now we know who is behind all this." Loki says, "She's not my daughter anymore. She is the ruler of the Underworld. You know what she's doing. She cuts the nails from all dead to build a ship. How crazy is that?" Odin replies, "Yes, I know she is crazy, but do not forget that she is the ruler of the Underworld and she is the ruler of the death." Loki responds, "But can Erik handle her?" Odin replies, "Not her. She has great powers. By the way, Erik is on his way here and will be here soon." Loki responds with surprised eyes, "Is he coming here soon to Valhalla? What has happened? He hates you so much." Odin replies, "Well, we see what he wants. He is almost here." Meanwhile, down at the soldiers outside the Death Forest, it is almost getting dark and most of the soldiers are resting. Sigurd, he has fallen asleep and snoring. The others throw small stones at him so he will stop snoring, but suddenly he wakes up and starts to shake. The other looks with big eyes and wonder what it is. They go to him and get to see an awful sight. Sigurd is full of ants and insects, and the men cannot see Sigurd. The men hear the insects come out of the Death Forest, and it sounds like millions of pebbles would have landed on the ground. They see how the insects eat him, and there are only bones left. Lars blows with its horns. Everyone starts running more westward. 90 men do not have a change to run away from the bugs and quickly becomes overwhelmed by the ants and insects. It takes just seconds, so it's only bones left. Lars shouting, "Out of the vast field now." Lars brings with him a stick that burns and runs out onto the field. The insects almost take him, but suddenly Lars beating with the stick in the tall grass and it catching fire. Lars run fast and has the fire stick as close to the ground as possible and catch fire. The wind that blows against the Death Forest and ants are burned. Cockroaches are burning too, but the insects can fly back into the Forest of Death. The soldiers see how large masses of ants get fried. The soldiers cheering only briefly as they remember that many men have died. They go around to see who has fallen, but they cannot recognize any of them, for there are only bones left of them. Lars goes to Olav and says, "We cannot stay here. We have to go further west and stay away from the Death Forest." Olav says, "You're right. Tell the men to pack their things and we go again for a few hours to the west." Lars, he blows the horn and shouting, "Pack your things. We are moving more toward the west." The soldiers, they pack up their things and Lars blows on his horn. The soldiers stands and looks at the bones and wave at them, and some yells out, "Live well, our friends." While at Erik and Slime, they see now the Tree of Life. Erik, he looks with big eyes and thinks that's not true. The tree is as wide as the widest lake and is so high that you cannot see where it ends. The tree is on a large island, and the south side of the tree grows the branches and big beautiful green leaves. The north side is just white with snow. It's just snow and ice. While Slime thinking, "Jay, am flying so high I can and take hold of the tree. And then we climb up to Valhalla. Just hold firmly." Erik thinks, "Okay, I hold firmly." Slime, she takes off and flies as high as she can, and the two become completely red, for it's getting really cold up there. Slime flaps its large wings as long as she can and trying to get hold of the tree. Chapter 8. Slime trying to take hold of a branch sticking out, but the wind blows too hard, but in the end she takes on the branch that is as large as the largest tree in southern forest. Erik, he clings tightly, and Slime looks at Erik with a smile and knows what is going to happen. Erik holds on tight when the Slime starts to climb. She stays on the south side of the tree. In the north side is so cold that you can easily lose a few limbs. She is approaching the top of the tree, and Erik sees with his red eyes how the tree goes through a roof. They approach the entrance, but suddenly they see a large bird with yellow eyes comes attacking. The bird is a hawk, and as big as Slime. Slime looking at the bird that is getting closer and comes fast. Slime thinking, "Erik, hold me as hard that you can." Slime climbs up with violent speed, and the hawk is getting closer. Slime goes a little to the side, and the hawk hits Slime with his wings, but Slime hold on tree with its sharp claws. Erik, he swings back and forth, but holds tightly. Hawk spins around and comes in at the north side of the tree, and they see how it turns white and goes into 1,000 pieces from the cold air. Erik thinks, "Slime, are you okay?" Slime smiles to Erik, and they climb the last few yards, and they are going through the roof, and they feel warm and comfortable. Erik sees Odin stands there with his sons Thor and Loki. Erik is so busy seeing the great palace and all the fine statues that are there. He forgets Slime, but suddenly Odin clears his throat and points towards Slime. Erik does not see Slime anywhere, but recognizes a woman's voice saying, "Erik, here I am." Erik sees a beautiful woman who has long brown hair that goes down to the floor and has brown eyes. She is completely naked. Erik turns away. Suddenly, a Vanir comes running with some clothes. She called Frid and is the sister Freya. She is a love goddess and daughter of the fish god Njord. She gives the clothes to the naked woman, who gets dressed and says to Erik, "You can turn around now." Erik turns around and sees the woman and wonder, "Where is Slime? Where is she?" The woman says, "Erik, I am Slime." Erik responds questioningly, "Are you Slime?" The woman replies, "Yes, it's me, but my real name is Saga." Erik, he is unsure what he will do, for he was accustomed with Slime and not this sweet woman, but Saga goes against Erik and hugging Erik, and he bursts into tears. They hug each other and finally say, "Erik, are you really my sister?" Saga says, "Yes, I am. Do you remember how I picked you up from the swamp?" Erik replies, "Yes, you are really Slime. Excuse me, Saga, my sister." Erik, he smiles and is so happy and hugs her even harder. They begin to move deeper towards Asgard and then see Erik a goat that is on a roof and asks, "Why do you have a goat on the roof?" Odin replies, "That's my goat Heidrun, and it streams mead from her that we drink here." Odin shouting, "Mist retrieves some cups with mead to us. Now let's celebrate." Mist comes with a fierce speed and hands out a few cups of golden mead in and gives it to Odin and Erik. Odin says, "Drink, Erik." Erik responds, "But I'm only 11 years old. I will do not drink mead." Odin answers, "Take a little sip." Erik, he hesitates a little at first, but eventually he takes the cup close to his mouth and drinks some of it. But it is not mead he drinks, it's the finest orange juice you can get. He thought he'd be serving mead. Odin, he laughs loudly and says, "Haha, I do not serve mead to children, but if a few more years you can taste mead." Saga and Erik holding hands, and they look at each other all the time. They have been together for 4 years, and for the first time, Saga shows her true shape. They come into the palace, where there are lots of Vanirs. Vanirs is the most beautiful women in the world, and most are married to gods, and some of them take care of Odin all the time. Freya comes in and sees Erik and goes to Odin and whispers in his ear. Odin starts laughing and tells Freya, "Yes, does that." Freya goes way through the big gate, and Erik arriving at a large table that is of pure gold, and the whole table is covered with food. There is no place for plates or cutlery. Odin says, "Eat, Erik, eat." Erik, he sits down on a chair and asks his sister to sit beside her. She does it, and throwing her big hair. The god Hona comes through the door and sees the fair woman who throws with his beautiful hair. Hona goes to Saga and takes her on the butt. Erik, he sees this and gets angry. His eyes turn red and the body takes fire. Erik jumps on Hona and throws him up against the ceiling, which is 100 yards high. Hona, he lands straight down at the table with all the food and becomes damaged. Everyone looks with big eyes. No one dares go to Erik. Even Odin does not dare say anything. Odin orders some few gods to remove Hona from the table, and Erik, he starts to calm down. Saga pats him on the back and hugging him as he burns all over his body. They look with big eyes how she does not get burned. Erik, he stops and burn and become completely normal again, but he is completely naked. His clothes have been burned. The table begins to give way to the heat of Erik, and it collapses. Quickly, Mist comes with a plaid and gives it to Saga that throws around on Erik's naked body. Everyone has calmed down, and Odin yells out, "No one can touch my son Erik or my daughter Saga. Anyone who does this has only himself to blame." Suddenly Freya comes in with a person. Erik turns against them and looking with big eyes and recognizes a person. It is Harald, who died 4 years ago when he was going to kill Shadow. Harald, he looks a little younger and has nice clothes on. Erik stands up and runs to Harald and hugs him. Erik, he says, "What are you doing here? You died in battle." Harald says, "Yeah, I died in battle, but Freya took me up here and live in Folkvang. Erik says, So you are fine now? Harold says, Yes, I have never had it better. Erik replies, If you are here, so maybe my mother is here too, and he smiles. Harold he nods as a no. Erik he becomes sad and his sister comes to comfort him. She hugs Erik. Odin sees that Erik is a bit sad and shouts, Nah, let's celebrate that Erik is here. Let's drink some mead. Mist comes with lightning speed and serves all with the golden mead. Erik he's trying to have fun but cannot stop thinking about his mother. Odin takes Erik aside and says, You know Skogul will do everything to kill you and your sister. Erik he replies, I know it. Odin says, There is something more behind all this. It is Hel that is the ruler over the realm of death. She is behind all of this. Erik replies, But why does she want us dead? Odin says, She does not want only you. She wants everyone to be in her kingdom. She wants to take over the earth and transform it with dead slaves. Erik replies, We have to stop her with the plans. Odin says, You and Saga could stop her. We do not have those large forces like you have down to earth. Erik responds, But how? Odin replies, You'll find it out eventually. Erik, he nods his head as yes and goes to his sister and tells her all what he was hearing from Odin. Erik, he goes and talks to Harald one last time. He knows he must return soon to Earth to protect his people. Odin comes with some new clothes to Erik and he puts on them. Erik and Saga goes around saying goodbye to everyone. They have to go to King's village. They head for the top of the tree and waving goodbye to everyone. They climb down carefully and suddenly turn Saga to slime. The clothes go in pieces that fall down to earth. Erik climbs up on slime that lets go from the tree. They fly down toward the earth in fierce momentum and eventually manage to slime to get control of the flight. Meanwhile, outside the western forest of Death, the soldiers have hit camp several miles from Death's forest. Suddenly everyone stands up. Lest they see how there is shining from the Death forest, several miles from them. They see the lights moving slowly to the south. They hear how there comes a thumping sound like an echo beating against the rock a little further away. They see how lots of small light coming towards the great light. The guards wake up the others. Lars looks with big eyes and blows with his horn that they are going away again. Lars tells Olaf, We must go at night and rest during the day. They seem to be more active in the evening and night. Olaf answers, It is a good idea. The soldiers are tired and worn out, but they know it is the best decision and that they are in danger at night. They pack up their things and start to go further south. They start walking and they see how it gathered itself more light in the Death forest. Lars shouting, Ignore it. Look forward. Chapter 9 per. The men do that, Lars says, but many of them are afraid of what will happen. Meanwhile, in the king's village, 30 men stand guard. Ivar, he cannot sleep and goes back and forth. He cannot sit still, and he's so nervous for what will happen. They see the eyes light in the Death forest and hope that the reinforcements coming fast. Ivar, he knows better that the reinforcements will not be here soon. Inside the middle of Death's forest gather the creatures, and Skogul comes up on a rock and looking towards 10,000 creatures from living dead wolves to big bears. Suddenly they hear how dead forest falls down and it's something big coming to them. It is Fenris Wolf coming through the forest. Fenrir goes slowly and sees the army of the Death. He goes below ground and Skogul standing on the rock and pats Fenris Wolf's head. Suddenly sees Skogul, the ruler Hel. He goes down gently on his knees and sees that some of the dead soldiers do not go down on their knees. He waves his sword and the other strikes down those who refuse to go down on their knees. They snatch of them arms and the heads from them, and they all look at each other and turn on their empty stomachs and open the mouth. It provides a drum-like sound. Everyone awakens in King's village and wondering what is happening and what is that sound. The soldiers in the west hear the terrible sound. Lars, he instructs them to keep going and increase the tempo against the king's village. Suddenly, a big dog that is almost as big as Fenrir Wolf come and sit beside ruler Hel. Hel looks at Skogul, and Skogul raises his sword, and everyone turns south and goes against King's village. The big silver moose come running from north and stops. Moose goes down on his knees and Skogul jumps up on it, and they continue towards the king's village. Everyone is waking to the king's village. Ivar instructs all women go to the forest, which is on the south side of the village. All the women pack their own food. They begin to go into the woods with the kids. Erik and Slime are now with the soldiers in the west. He looks down on them and how they hold torches. The sun starts to go up. Erik is pointing down and Slime sees it. Slime flies around and glides slowly down towards the soldiers. They land in front of them and some become afraid, but Lars calms them down and says, "Stay cool, I know them." Meanwhile, the Fenrir wolf recognizes an odor of Erik and Slime. Fenrir wolf looks to the right and turns quickly against Skogul and asks permission to go away from the group. Skogul nods as a yes, and Fenrir wolf starts to run towards the soldiers and smell his way to them. He comes out of the forest and it is far to the soldiers and Erik. Erik feels the earth shaking and yells out, "Everyone in the defense position now." Slime flies up in the air to see what it is, and she sees that Fenrir wolf is heading at high speed towards Erik and soldiers. Slime she breathes fire against Fenrir but misses. Slime decides to fly to the soldiers and jet fire at the soldiers as a protection. They start blowing east towards Death's forest and the fire is spreading fast towards the woods. Fenrir wolf stops and have to run around the fire to get to Erik. Meanwhile in Valhalla, Odin sees everything that happens down there. He calls in Vidar, who are the forest warrior. Odin says to Vidar, "Go down and help Erik now." Vidar nods yes and take up his sword and run past the Tree of Life and jumps into another hole. Erik and the others suddenly see how the cloud flashes. They feel the earth shaking and big flash far away. The soldiers do not know what to do. Lars shouting, "We are being attacked from two sides. Set up a defense in that direction too," and points where the sound and flashing is coming from. All get big eyes when they see a giant comes running at them. It is twice as big as the trees and will continue running. His steps are so large that he jumps over the soldiers and rushes into the fire. He takes hold of Fenrir wolf's neck and wrestles the wolf down. Erik understands who it is. He saw him when he was in Valhalla. The soldiers, they look at Erik and shouting, "Hurrah!" Vidar takes hold of the lower jaw and upper jaw. Fenrir wolf's lower jaw breaks and he falls to the ground. Vidar takes his sword and press into the Fenrir wolf's heart. Meanwhile, up in Valhalla, Loki falls on the floor and crying. Odin comes to comfort his son and says, "I know that Fenrir wolf was your son, but he was too wild and killing human." Loki, he takes his hand and press at Odin's face and goes away crying. Meanwhile, down at Earth, all the soldiers cheering and Vidar comes against Erik with large steps. He takes up Erik with his big hand and takes up the front of the face and says, "Odin wanted to help you a little bit," and he flashed with his right eye. He puts down Erik at the ground and taking some giant steps so he gets up to speed. A flash comes from Vidar and he's gone. The soldiers, they are so happy, but Slime is so happier that she jumps around like a dog chasing its own tail. Erik, he walks up to Olav and says, "You must try to come as fast as possible to the king's village. The creatures in Death Forest move faster what you are doing." Olav answers, "It is not so easy. The soldiers are tired, but we will do our best." Erik, he smiles to Olav and says, "Make your best. Get some rest during the day and walk on the evening and night." Erik, he waves goodbye to everyone and jumps on Slime's back. Slime is standing up on its back legs and starts flapping her wings and lift off the ground. The soldiers protect their faces of all the gravel flying around by the wind coming from Slime's wings. Erik and Slime is high up now and circulates around and waving to the soldiers. The soldiers wave back and begin their go to south towards King's Village. Slime flies against the King's Village and flying fast up in the clouds and both turn red. Erik, he sees with Slime's eyes and sees a fire in a house a little further away. They become curious and fly there. They land outside the house that is on fire. They see that there are some people coming out from the forest. Erik and Slime see how a woman carries her baby and crying. Erik gets sad when he sees that the child is injured and he gets angry and asks, "Who has done this? Answer me now." The woman named Astrid says that a large silver moose did this several hours ago. Erik says nothing and jumps up. Slime's back and they fly up into the air and Slime, she wants to go to King's Village, but Erik, he doesn't want to go there. He wants to go to the Death Forest. Erik turns red over his body and thinking, Now we fly to the death forest and burn it down. Slime replies, Jeet is dangerous and we may lose the entire war. Better we all gather in King's village. Erik, he is so angry and think, we fly there now. Slime she does as Erik says, and they fly high above the clouds. After a while, Erik sees with Slime's eyes and sees the silver moose is down there in the woods. Skogul is riding the moose. Slime shoots fire to trees and Erik throwing fireballs at the silver moose, but misses. Every creature start running for takes cover in the forest. Ruler Hel and the dog take shelter in a cave. The forest fire starts on the west side and the creatures and the silver moose runs to east past the fire and they continue to run south. Slime thinking, do you see what we have done? They are running towards the king's village. They will get there before the soldiers. Erik thinks, this was not good. We hurry to the king's village. They face south and fly with fierce momentum. Meanwhile, in King's village, it is morning and the guards no longer see eyes on Death Forest. Everyone gets nervous. Chapter 10. Suddenly they hear how it breaks and cracks from Death Forest. Ivar blowing the horn and the all guards are ready to defend. They look towards the forest but seeing nothing. They hear rustling and branches are broken. All get big eyes when they see what comes out. A beautiful woman comes walking from the dead forest. All the men are enchanted by the woman that is so beautiful. Ivar sees that the woman does not go with her feet and her hovering on top of the soil. She does not touch the earth. Ivar shouting, shoot her. A guard named Sune says, we cannot shoot a woman who is so beautiful. Ivar strikes Sune straight in the face and takes his bow and all the arrows he has and shoots an arrow straight at her. She stops and looks toward Ivar and grabs the arrow precisely when to hit the body. Suddenly change her figure. She becomes white in the face and gets big yellow eyes. Yellow slime draining from her mouth, and she raises her arm with the arrow and screaming violently so that all people in the king's village holding their ears. They see how the thousands of creatures from the woods running towards the village. Ivar shouts, here they come. Shoot everything that moves. Everyone look over the wall and flexing their bows and shooting arrows at them. They hit the creatures, but them still running against King's village. They see that wolves and bears running at them. Meanwhile, soldiers from the west heard the horn and scream from the king's village. Olav orders that they have to start running. Lars tells Olav, we run into the death forest. We can maybe take a few stragglers there. Olav he nods and change the way towards death forest. Lars yells out, take off your all-heavy equipment and start running. The soldiers take out their knives and cut loose the heavy armor that they wear and take with them only the essentials like spears, bows and swords. Meanwhile, up in the clouds dives Erik and Slime quickly down towards the king's village and see how the king's village is under attack. Slime shoots red light rays and it explodes, and there are flying bears and wolves in the air and parts from them. Ruler Hel raises her hand up again and they all go back into the woods again. Hel hurries towards the forest and stops at the edge of the woods and screams out violently, and she looks towards Erik and Slime. Erik holds his ears from the scream and loses balance and falls from Slime's back. Erik falls down to the ground and Hel screaming still. Ivar sees all this and shoots an arrow towards Hel that sees the arrow is moving towards her. She was waving her hand and the arrow changes direction and she stops screaming. Slime folding its wings and dives toward Erik. All men can see how Erik is struggling in the air and Slime come after him. Erik becomes red and becomes a fireball. All men see how Erik is burning and falls down to earth. Slime cannot catch up with Erik and hit hard on the ground and a big explosion appears. Everyone see with big eyes and Sune shouting, no, Erik is dead. Suddenly, when the smoke has settled, Erik rises up and goes to Death Forest. It's almost like he's in a trance and burning. Hel sees all this and runs into the woods while Erik throws fireballs towards the trees and they explode. All the trees catch fire and Erik he goes into the woods and tosses her arms, so fire coming out everywhere from his body. The Death Forest burns vigorously. Erik turns and goes back to King's village. At the forest edge there is Slime waiting for Erik and she stomps anxiously. Erik comes out of the woods and ends burning while he collapses. Ivar takes his coat and runs to the well and dip it so it becomes very wet and runs toward Erik. He comes to Erik and sees that he is totally hot and throws on his coat that is drenched with water. It begins to steam from Erik, and Ivar grab him and carry him to the king's village. All men shout, "Erik! Erik!" Erik is totally nude and red on his body. All the men gather around Ivar and Erik. Slime comes and pushes through the people and come to Erik. Slime licks Erik on his face and he wakes up. Slime skips and jumps like a dog. Ivar carries in him the king's house. Ivar shouts, "All men go to your posts, they may attack at any time." Men have forgotten about it and hurry up and see at the forest, but they see nothing. They fear that it will be a major attack in the evening. The men take turns to go eat food and get some rest. While at soldiers in the west, they come running and stops at the edge of the death forest and looking towards the forest. Lars looks around and sees the men that they are afraid to go into. Lars shouting, "Come on, men, we do it for our king and Odin." They dare not go into the woods, but Lars he jumps off his horse and enters slowly into the woods. Olav follows him. The men look at each other with wide eyes. A man named Sigvard shouting, "Come on, guys, do you want to die as chicken or as a hero?" They think for a brief second and shouts, "For Odin." Lars sees how the men going into the woods and smiles to Olav. They look around and see no living tree or bushes. Everything is dead. They start to go into deeper and deeper into the forest and turn south. Lars says, "Spread yourselves and keep your weapons ready." The men go in a line and keep a few feet apart. Suddenly they hear how it cracks in the bushes a little further away. They look at each other and stops. Lars he goes first to see what it is. The last few yards he goes down on his belly and crawling slowly. He crawls into a bush and pulling away the branches, which is no protection at all because there are no leaves on the branches. He stays so close to the ground as he can. Chapter 11. Lars he waves his hand for everyone to lie down. Lars is rubbing at his eyes. He believes it is not true what he sees. He sees lots of things. Wolves, people who are just skin and bones, bears and cats. It is all the animals that are in a forest, and they are tens of thousands, and they stick together. Lars noticed that all have yellow eyes, and they shine brightly. Lars thinks, how will they defeat these? They are at least 10 times more. Lars slopes gently back to the men. After a few minutes he comes back to his men. He tells what he has seen. The men start to panic. One of the men is almost in panic. Lars notices this, that he will any time scream. Lars takes a hammer from one of the men and hit him hard on the head, and he falls down dead. The men see how Lars takes his index finger over his mouth to show that they must be silent. He points them to go west. The man goes slowly so as not creatures does not hear them. They see the open field that is further away. Lars takes his horse, but it would not go. Lars decides to leave it there. They come out of the forest. Lars says to the soldiers, "Drink as much water you can, because we must start to run." Sigvard says, "Water what is not good for you. We only drink mead." And everyone starts laughing while they start running towards the king's village. Meanwhile, in King's village, Erik is in his bed completely exhausted. Ivar, sitting in a chair beside him, see that he wakes up and says, "Erik, you're lucky that you are alive. You become exhausted by making fire." Erik, he looks at Ivar with a smile and says, "I am completely exhausted. I just want to get some sleep." Ivar pats his head and walks away and go down the stairs. Slime looks anxiously towards Ivar, that patting Slime on the head, and says, "He will be fine. He just needs some rest." Slime becomes happy and smiles. Slime strokes her head on Ivar and goes to her place at the fireplace and settles down. Lisbeth comes with some fish and put the front Slime's head, but Slime does not want them. Lisbeth picks them up and stroking Slime's head and says, "I am saving them for you." Slime fall asleep fast. Ivar is out now and makes sure that they reinforce the wall. The smith is working hard to make arrowheads. Ivar comes down to him and says, "How's are the arrowheads?" Smith says, "They are ready, but we have not straight branches to make them finished." Ivar shouts to some men that they should go to the forest and pick some branches that are straight. The men look at each other. Ivar says to them, "Go to the woods on the south side. I do not mean the death forest." The men will be relieved, but Ivar, he thinks, sometimes they cannot think for themselves. Ivar is nervous, but do not want to appear nervous for the men. He goes up the wall and looks towards Death Forest. It is afternoon and Erik, he is still sleeping. Ivar looks to the west of Death Forest. He sees how the soldiers come running from far away. He jumps on his horse and rides out to them. Olaf shouting, "They are tens of thousands of creatures in the woods and will certainly be more than that in evening." Ivar think it's not true and think, how should we handle this? Quite impossible even with Erik's and Slime's powers. They come to the king's village and they ride in through the main gate from the south side. The soldiers are totally tired of the running so much. They fall down and shouting, "Give us water, we are thirsty." Lars laughs and shouts out, "Now do you want water?" Many are so tired that they fall asleep on the ground among all the clay. Olav looks at them and says to Lars, "Let them rest for tonight, they have much to do." Ivar shouts to his men, "Take a few pigs and slaughter them so we can eat them." The men need food. 2 men go to the pigs and chopping those head off. Some others make a fire and cut up pigs into smaller pieces so it is quicker ready to eat, but most of the men are sleeping. Those who manage to be awake are eating the delicious grilled pigs. It's almost evening and the men who have slept recovers and they are hungry. They eat up what's left of the pigs. They roll out large barrels of mead and the men standing in line to fill their cups. They sit crowded inside the village. Many of them borrows house from the people that are in the South Forest. It's almost dark, and the guards look all yellow eyes that are at the forest edge of the Death Forest. Ivar, he runs up to Erik and he wakes him up and says, "Hurry up, soon it begins. There is some food in the big room downstairs." Erik is dazed and looking for his clothes and feels how dry he is in the mouth. He cannot find his clothes. He is completely naked and goes into his mother's room to see if there are clothes there. He is looking in a cupboard and finds some pants and a big sweater that has been Sven's. He sees a locket that belonged to his mother and takes it. He studies it carefully and sits down on the bed. No one else has been in there since Maria and Sven died. He picks up a blanket and smells it. He recognizes the smell of Maria and bursts into tears. Slime wakes up to and feeling that Erik is crying. She starts making whining voice. Erik hears Slime and drops the blanket into the ground. He puts on the medallion and the rest of the clothes he found in the room. He goes into his room and puts on a pair of shoes and goes down into the big room, and there stands Slime and waiting for him. She leaps and jumps when he enters the room. On the table there is the fried salmon and pressed apple drink. He picks up a pair of grilled salmons and throws them into Slime that devours them in no time. Erik, he eats some salmon and rinses it with fresh pressed apple drink. He goes to the Slime and touches her head and thinking, now is the time. They are coming soon. Erik hugging Slime and they both go out the king's house. He sees for the first time that the soldiers are in the king's village. The soldiers and the guards look at Erik and Slime and they shout out, "Erik! Erik!" Erik, he jumps up on Slime and shouts, "I know that this battle is impossible to win, but we are Vikings and we never give up. Do the best and you will come up to Valhalla." Everyone shouts, "Erik! Erik!" Ivar looks down toward the sea of people from the wall and know that everyone will do their best. He sees that the soldiers are in good spirits and that they drink mead, and that's a good sign. Ivar, he smiles. After a few hours, they see more and more eyes shine from Death's Forest. Thousands of people who look like walking corpses coming out of the woods and hit on their empty stomachs while them open their mouths. It provides a drum-like sound that is ear-deafening. Ivar sees this and shouts, "Now is the time! Get ready!" Half of the soldiers go out of the main gate from the south side and go outside to the north side of the wall. Ruler Hel coming out from the forest edge, and she has with her wolves and bears. Finally comes the big silver moose, and on the back sitting Skogul. All soldiers in the king's village get big eyes when they see how many there are. Ivar shouts to Erik, "Now they are here, Erik." Erik thinks, "We do our best, sister." Slime starts flapping her wings, and fast they get into air. Skogul sees Erik and Slime fly up in the air. Ruler Hel lifts her arm and the dead creatures runs to King's village. Ivar shouting, "Wait for my signal." The soldiers see wolves, bears and people who have just skin and bones running towards them. The soldiers that are outside the village are pointing them toward the north side. Ivar shouts, "Wait, wait now." They shoot off arrows from the wall down at the enemy. 500 men shoot arrows from inside the walls. It is raining arrows on them and some hits, but they do not seem to take any damage. They fire off several arrows and hits, but the creatures continue on run. Erik and Slime see how the creatures do not die and dives down, and Slime jets fire at near north side wall for protection. They fly up and Skogul look at Erik and Slime. The large silver moose wanders slowly towards King's village. Erik and Slime dive down again and jets fire on the creatures, and they burn while continuing to run, but eventually when it has been burning for a while, so they fall down and the soldiers cheering. Skogul jumps off the moose. He goes against the soldiers outside the castle, and it seems like no one is watching him. He goes and pats the soldiers gently with a sword on the head or shoulder. In the same second, a creature bites them in the neck, and they die. The wolves come in violent momentum and become impaled by spears, but they continue as nothing has happened. Erik and Slime continues to breathe fire against the creatures. Erik sees how Skogul going around and pointing his sword at the soldiers, and soon after dies of a creature is attacking them. Erik points towards Skogul and Slime fly there and flying low. Erik jumps off Slime and end up 10 feet away from Skogul. Skogul see Erik and cranks with his sword, and the big moose comes running at the same time treading on wolves and bears. Slime sees how they kill people and trying to climb onto the wall. Slime jets fire upon them and the wall is on fire. The moose is next to Skogul, hitting with his hooves on the ground. The large silver moose jet fire with the nose. Erik, he is completely red on his eyes and standing completely still. The moose rushing forward and opens its huge mouth and swallows Erik. The soldiers believe that it is not true, and Ivar screaming, "No!" Slime sees this and breaks out and spraying the fire to all creatures, and Ruler Hel sees this and starts back up against the death forest. Suddenly, when the moose is on the road to the wall, he suddenly stops. The moose are steaming from mouth and nose. Silver plates begin to vibrate and melt, and it explodes and goes into 1,000 pieces. The explosion is so great that everyone falls down by the huge blast. Skogul flies 20 yards and drops his sword. From the smoke comes Erik burning and picks up Skogul's sword. He raises it and beats it to pieces against a rock. All people see how all creatures' eyes go dead and collapse. Now it is just Ruler Hel and Skogul left. Erik goes to Skogul that is lying down on the ground. He takes hold of his hair on his head and patting gently with his sword on his shoulder. Skogul sputters and gets big eyes when Erik hit him hard on the neck. He strikes again and raises his left hand and has Skogul's head in his hand. All the people cheering and Ruler Hel have seen everything and flee into the woods. Slime comes running against Erik and he falls to the ground. Slime licks Erik on his face and Erik takes his arms around Slime's neck. The soldiers come running towards Erik and they lifts him up and carries him into the king's village. Ivar shouts out, "Now we're going to party that we have overcome the evil ones." Ivar orders that some guards should go to the forest at south side and get the women and children to join the party. Everyone shouting, "Erik! Erik! Slime! Slime!" Meanwhile, in Valhalla, the gods have seen the battle from there and congratulate Odin. After a few hours, all the women and children comes to join the party in King's village. Erik sees Eva come from the forest and runs to her and gives her a kiss on the cheek while he hugs her hard. Eva becomes quite red in her face. A few years pass and Eve start like Erik more and more. Ivar, he sees how they kiss and holding hands, and Slime is always with them everywhere. They upgrade the walls with stones. Now Erik 18 years old and be crowned as the king of Northland. Ivar, he sits on the throne and shouting out to Erik. Erik walks into the king's house. The whole house is full of people, and next to the throne sits Slime and smiles. He goes over to Ivar, who takes his golden crown and put it on Erik's head and says, "You are the rightful king." Ivar smiles and Erik goes and sits on the throne and everyone welcomes their new king. Hurrah for King Erik. They partying for days, and it gone 1 year, and Erik is now 19 years old. It is summer and 30 degrees in the shade. The birds are chirping and flowers grow. Erik tells Ivar that he will take the big step and married to Eva. Ivar become happy and he pats Erik's shoulder and says, "You have to have flowers when asking married her. Women like that." Erik replies, Thanks for the tip. Erik smiles and goes to a house that has nice flowers outside and asks the lady there if he could take 10 red roses for Ask Eva's hand. The woman says, "Take what you need," and she smiles. Erik, he thanks the lady. He takes out his knife and cut off the 10 red roses and arranges them into a bouquet. He goes to the king's house and sees that Eva is in the great hall for preparing for dinner. He holds the bouquet behind his back and walks up to her and Eva facing with her back. Erik, he kisses her neck. She turns around. Erik looks with happy eyes and goes down on one knee and shows the roses. Eva, she understands what is going to happen. Erik, he cannot say a word, but in the end he says the words, "Eva, do you want to marry me?" and holds out the bouquet. Eva takes the bouquet and hugs Erik and yells out, "Yes!" They kiss and suddenly they feel something. It gets cold. They see how the roses freezes and falls apart into 1,000 pieces. They go out and see that it's snowing and very cold. Slime comes running and have red eyes. Erik gets red eye too. Eva yells, "What is Erik?"